to the show. Let's go. Line number one. Say good morning to the independent member of the House of Assembly, Mount Pearl, Southlands, Paul Lane. Morning, Paul. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy, and how are you this morning?
Couldn't be better. How about you?
I'm best kind, sir, best kind. Paddy, I just wanted to make a brief comment on the press release that was put out by Minister of Service and L as it relates to school bus safety. And I do want to say, I do want to recognize when government does something positive and a step in the right direction. I think it's important that we acknowledge that as opposed to just simply beating up on them all the time when they don't make good decisions. So to my mind, at least, this is a step in the right direction. It was a good decision, and I'm glad to see that we're going to be putting, some stricter measures in place to deal with the inspection of school buses and to hold operators and repair facilities and so on, more accountable and put in more punitive measures for those who don't. I think that's a good thing for sure. Also glad to hear that there's going to be more spot checks by the department, which again is also positive. I would have liked to have seen, to be honest with you, and I know there may be some logistics around this in terms of summer vacation and so on, but I really would have liked to have seen, a statement saying that all school buses would be inspected by the department prior to them going on the road in September. I think that ultimately would be where we need to be. And certainly, I think there's also issues around bus tendering and so on, whether it be the length of contract, I know is certainly one issue. If you want to have new buses and on the road, then extending the length of the contracts to allow companies to be able to purchase new buses and have a reasonable time period to finance them and pay them off. I think that would be certainly something that would be beneficial for sure. And, I do know that when the new Public Procurement Act was passed in the House, one of the things that was talked about and written there in principle at least was this concept of value for money versus low bid. Now, of course, the only issue we have is that all the details are in the regulations, so we don't really know exactly what that's going to look like.
Well, because there's no way to document the black and white of what that means, right? And so it's a nice guiding theory, but how you actually put it in practice is going to be tricky. For instance, does value for dollar spent mean strictly the tender bid you made versus the age of your bus, kilometers on the bus, last inspection had, track record of the company, where your route is, highway or urban? I mean, how do you actually evaluate the ultimate value for money on, for instance, busing? The issue for me, the tender is big, length of contract and low bid wins. It's the difference in the tender times that they go out. It's the age of the buses we allow on the road and the kilometer allowance that we have for school buses. If you don't deal with those three measures, value for money and thicker fines and tighter regulations might be pretty ineffectual.
Paddy, I agree. I totally agree. And that's why I said what was announced yesterday is a step in the right direction, but it's not going to cure it all. And a lot of it will come down to the tendering or the contract practices as we move forward. And hopefully, as you said, that when we start looking at school buses and the tendering process, that we will indeed start looking at value for money. And like I said, that would include things such as the length of the contract and, as you said, the age of the buses and all that, as opposed to simply low bid. And I guess we'll have to wait and see how that unfolds. I certainly encourage the minister to continue down that road. Now, with that being said, Paddy, even when we're talking about the school bus safety and in terms of tendering and so on, we also still have a number of outstanding issues around busing that really needs to be addressed by, the new English school district and or the Minister of Education. And those are issues around the 1.6 kilometer rule, the courtesy seating, and this new double bus run schedule. So at least what I'm going to do, I'm going to write the new English school district and ask them to review these issues and perhaps come up with some recommendations to improve it. And I guess if we get nowhere there, then we'll move on to the minister. This has been an ongoing issue, and certainly something that the Minister of Education, when he was in opposition, he had all kinds of issues around this, and suddenly now that he's minister, we don't hear a word on it. So I'll certainly be pushing for that as well.
And that's a fair push to make, and whether or not that's going to have a whole lot of impact, that's all of us pushing at you specifically. Look, the government here, I think they're starting to try to make the right things happen, and why wouldn't they? It's in their best interest. We know there's a disparity between the cost of supplying a publicly operated bus versus a private operated bus, probably a different approach to the frequency of inspections and the kind of buses allowed. That's all fine. But the three key areas that everybody realizes is the real jeopardy we put school-age children in when it comes to the quality, the reliability of a bus. If we don't deal with those, you can make the fines $100 million, but that $100 million won't bring back a busload of kids in a ditch. So,
no, you're absolutely right, Paddy. I agree. So, like I said, just to conclude, kudos to the Minister of Service and L for making this move. At least I think it's positive, and hopefully through tendering, like I said, we'll see some more improvements. And like I said, the Minister of Education has some work to do as well, and I'll be trying my best to keep his feet to the fire. Paddy, before I go, I just want to wish you and all of the staff at VOCM very Merry Christmas, a prosperous New Year. You guys are doing a tremendous public service. I also just want to wish all of my constituents all the best for a peaceful and happy Christmas season, and certainly to all of the essential workers, who may not be able to enjoy the Christmas the same way as we all will, because they'll have to work. And of course, we're referring to people in our healthcare system, our RNC, RCMP, fire department, people who plow our roads, the wardens in the penitentiary, and the list goes on. They all know who they are, and what they do perform a great service for the people. And like I said, while we're all enjoying Christmas dinner, a lot of those people are going to have to work to keep us safe. So Merry Christmas to them as well.
And that was
to all the people of Newfoundland and Labrador.
That was a pretty tight member statement.
There you go.
Thanks, Paul. Same very best wishes to you and your family.
You too, my friend.
Thanks, pal.
All
Bye-bye.
the best. Bye now.